What's up, YouTube? ODST General back again with another Operation Trebuchet news update. This week, guys, I don't have a lot of flashy stuff to show off to you from the main mod. Biggest news this week is that the main mod had a fairly sizable update. Most of it was bug fixes, although it did include things like the, oh my god, I forgot the name of it, not the site, the Lance. There we go. Just out of my head for a second there. I'm looking at the patch notes in front of me too. That's the worst part. But it is a long list of patch notes, and most of it, again, is bug fixes. So anyways, the Lance was added. Some highway pieces, some hidden things like highway signs and stuff were added, so they're now available in Eden. Most of that stuff was basically geared towards the development of New Mombasa as a map, so the people developing it actually have access to that stuff outside of the dev build, and then when that map goes live, everything placed in it will be available to all of you guys as well. Aside from that, like I said, there is many bug fixes, a lot of sound updates, so that things like side rails misplaced, gunners not rotating, grizzly open faces under turret, all sorts of stuff like that fixed. So just tons and tons of bug fixes. Now, aside from that, there was one picture that I have this week from the main mod. If I find anything else, I'll do like one last double check and I'll probably add it in after recording this. The scythe has a damage model, so that's pretty cool. Scythe destruction model, that's actually in the patch notes too. So that's nice. A few other items still needing damage models, such as the Tyrant guns, I do believe never received them. But it is nice having those damage models on there. It is very helpful if you're facing off against them. Okay, so that is the main news for the mod. That's it. But what we do have to talk about this week is community stuff, and we have plenty of juicy community stuff for you guys this week. Starting off with bad news, the Gamma mod was once again pulled from the workshop. This is now like the third time or something like that it's been pulled. Unfortunately, this time it was discovered that some of the helmets were actually ripped assets, from what I understand, and that is the reason it was pulled. I don't know if there's plans to re-upload it without the ripped assets. I don't know what assets were ripped, or if that's actually even the case. That could just be incorrect information I read. Nonetheless, it is pulled. That part's definitely true. So hopefully we'll get to see some of that stuff return at some point down the road. But again, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. So that is the sad news. Now let's go ahead and get into the exciting news. Starting us off on the exciting news, we have Baseplate's new mod, the Carver Findings. So this mod, if you just glance at it, you might think it's a replacement to like OpCan or Fireteam Zulu. That's not the case. This is actually intended to bolster those mods. Obviously, Fireteam Zulu and OpCan have been big go-to mods for the community for a while. What the Carver Findings basically looks to do is just flush out the forces that are already in those mods even further by giving them additional units and weapons and stuff that match the themes of the pre-existing factions. In some cases, creating actual factions for some of the stuff. So, like, some of those have Oni units, like Optre has, Oni units, and Fireteam Zulu, I believe, has some freestanding Oni units. And what the Carver Findings does is it basically creates an Oni faction for something like that. So this is kind of a cool mod. There isn't a whole lot for me to show off that hasn't already been shown off previously with OpCan and stuff already, because again, a lot of this is just taking OpCan assets and stuff like that and kind of reforming them. In some cases, there's new textures, new vehicles, like I said. So there is new stuff, but because it's been a while since I've played OpCan and I don't have time to go through and pick out each individual unit, you guys are going to have to check it out and just kind of get a small sampling or idea of what to kind of expect with this mod with the B-roll footage. Which brings us to the big news this week. Now, last week, a lot of you guys really freaked out with the addition of these static Covenant ships. That was a huge thing for some of you guys. Given how big the static Covenant ships were, and the Needlers, which surprisingly I heard a lot less about the Needlers than I did the static Covenant ships, which I think is weird. This week is going to blow your guys' mind. So the first MEU is really going hard on the Covenant stuff. They are going with the hashtag Covenant by Christmas, as you guys may have seen in my comments last week. So they actually invited me over to their Discord and TeamSpeak to show off some of the work in progress stuff they have. As it turns out, I did miss a couple of things. They had some sort of ability. I still haven't figured out how to activate it. They showed it to me. I have no idea where I need to actually go to activate it. So it might have been work in progress stuff that's not released to their public mod. But they actually have the ability to jump in and jump out Covenant ships, call in glassing attacks that are attached to their ships, all sorts of really neat stuff like that. They were working on a lockdown elephant that they could go to and have a scroll wheel option. It would spawn buildings around it and spawn weapons on it, and the elephant would no longer be able to move, which was really cool. However, the other stuff that they're working on is really exciting. So the first thing we have to show off is a Covenant charging station. So just a neat little Covenant weapon station, nothing super crazy or outrageous. I'm guessing this isn't actually going to charge the weapons because obviously Covenant weapons don't work like they do in Halo and Optre because of armor limitations. With that being said, it's a great set piece. Maybe it'll hold ammunition for the Covenant weapons. I don't know. But it is still a nice set piece. And as a person who does a lot of set dressing for videos and occasionally will, actually set up and make a mission myself on the odd time, I love having extra assets like this. I've said that time and time again. This is no different. Then we switch over to a vehicle here, and we have the Ghost. Of course, previously in Optre, the Ghost was removed because it was very, very out of date as far as the model goes. It was the butt of many jokes, especially in comparison to the new elites and the other new models being put out by Drake and the other people who have contributed to First Contact. Unfortunately, a new Ghost was never made for First Contact, at least not so far. So one of the items that the First has taken on is the Ghost. Now, this model is, of course, still a render. It's not completed yet. It's not textured. It's not in game. It's still in the rendering software, but still a pretty decent looking model. Pretty excited to see this. Obviously, the Ghost is a staple of the Covenant. It is a very tricky vehicle, I think, to get working properly in armor and have it decent, but I'm definitely excited to see where they go with it. I'm not sure if they're going to do something kind of like the Wraith, or if they're going to do something completely different. We'll have to wait and see, though. Then the First also showed off some deployable shields and bubble shields. Now, when they were showing off the deployable shields to me, these were something that could be garrisoned in Zeus. And the ones they showed off, and you guys will see this later when you're looking at the video for a different asset, were actually transparent. So when I actually got the updated version of their mod, the shields were not transparent and they could not be deployed in. I don't know if that's still work in progress on the back end and that just hasn't been pushed to the public mod, or if I need an additional mod to actually get this to work properly. So just keep that in mind too. I'm guessing that these are still work in progress and the stuff they have done has not been pushed public yet. Now, with that being said, both these are pretty cool assets. I'm really excited about the idea that you can actually garrison units into these deployable covers and stuff like that too. The bubble shield is, of course, something we already had in Optre, but this one will actually have a model for the bubble shield generator, which is fantastic. Just a nice little detail, a little bit extra. I did kind of hope we would see the bubble shield grenade that another unit had done previously, that they actually were able to throw down a grenade and it would spawn in the bubble shield temporarily on a timer and it could be destroyed and all that stuff. It was a really cool script for the bubble shield. Not something that we got here, though, but that's okay, because, again, it's still an upgrade once it's actually finished, and it's actually got the model for the shield generator. Then we go over to a very early model. This is probably the earliest model that was work in progress with them, and this is the Covenant multi-unit dropship from Halo Reach, I do believe. Basically, this is supposed to fit, half a dozen units or whatever into it, and they all drop out and come out from every direction and just wreck all sorts of havoc. The Covenant have two drop pods. They have this, and they had the single-person HEVs that the elites drop in during Halo 2. Obviously, the human HEVs, the human dropships, have been a huge part of Optre for years now. They're the staple of pretty much every ODST clan. They're not used necessarily every day, every mission, but they are used a lot. And the Covenant lack them. And I think that having something like this is going to be great. Obviously, there's issues sometimes bringing in spirits and other ground-based vehicles and confined areas. Something like that, the drop pod's not going to really have a problem with that because it's just going to drop wherever it's going to drop. If it drops on a rock high up, it's going to drop on a rock high up. It doesn't care that the rock's there. It's still going to drop. Might be an issue for the elites getting out, but it's still going to actually get to where it needs to get to. Sometimes that doesn't always happen with dropships. They can really throw a fight on you. Sometimes there's tricks to try and bypass it, but just actually having something that you don't have to fight to get units into the fight, either friendly or enemy elites, is going to be great. However, those dropships do look pretty good. And the first has decided to also add in a Phantom. This is actually probably the most developed of all their projects currently. The Phantom is flying. It uses the Pelican's flight model. It holds, from what I understand, about 30 elites. And I say about 30, I believe it's exactly 30 elites. The elites are able to fire from the vehicle. The Phantom itself fires. The elites will get out in the correct location. They enter in through the correct location. It's got a texture, but the texture is a placeholder, so that's going to get replaced at some point in time. Obviously, the interior is not textured at all. The doors open and close. This is a very cool asset. Now, it is kind of redundant with the Spirit dropship, I'll say that. But I do think a lot of people prefer the Phantom design over the Spirit. Halo 1 was my first Halo, so I'm a little bit partial to the Spirit. I don't think it gets enough love from a lot of the community, but this is still very exciting, very cool. Definitely makes me wish we had Brutes, just because obviously the Spirit's a little bit more synonymous with Elites, whereas the Brutes are a little bit more synonymous with the Phantom, even though both used both types of dropship. Nonetheless, still a very, very cool asset. I'm very excited for this one. This is probably the coolest thing that I got to see in action. However, this is probably not the coolest thing that they're working on. So there was a couple of character projects that was mentioned, and I believe I can talk about all this. They didn't tell me I could. They invited me there so I could talk about these projects and hype up their work. So that's what I'm going to do. I wasn't given full details on the character projects, but from what I understand, they are working on adding in other Covenant species and aliens. So I do have a little bit of footage of the Guta being worked on. So the Guta is obviously the big alien monster from Halo Reach. It's not a Covenant, but it is an alien life form, and the thing's massive. I don't know if something like this is even viable in Arma. I don't know how the first plans to actually integrate this, because this is going to take custom animations and everything. This isn't something that you can just plop onto an Arma Man skeleton and it's going to work correctly. At least I don't think. I can't imagine that would be the case. Maybe there's a way they could cheese it and make it look like it's right, but I doubt it. Nonetheless, I am still very intrigued to see how they approach it. But this isn't the only thing they're actually working on as far as character models go. They did mention that they are working on Jackals, and that the Jackals will be on a standard Arma Man frame. They did say one of the drawbacks to that is that the legs would be facing the wrong direction, so it's not going to be perfect exactly. But with that being said, they are just aiming to have passable Jackals in-game, and playable, and functional, and fightable, again, by Christmas. The whole Covenant by Christmas thing. However, they are also adding Grunts, and with the Grunts, I don't know if they're doing the standard Arma Man frame. It's hard to say. The Grunts are pretty close in size to human, despite certain, I guess, perceptions of them, because you're usually playing as Master Chief. They look pretty tiny by comparison. I don't know if these are going onto the human skeleton, but they are working on the Grunts. These things are terrifying, probably for the wrong reasons, but nonetheless, it's still really cool to see these things in. I really am looking forward to seeing how these things actually function and how they look once they're completed. There obviously a lot of work needed. There's stretching of the models. There's gaps in the models. The textures are placeholders, I assume. But it is a start. It is a Grunt in-game, and while the Optrade dev team did get to the point of having Grunts in-game, they were a long ways off from actually being completed, so it'll be kind of interesting to see if the first can get these guys completed. Alright guys, that is it for this week. I unfortunately don't have anything else to show off to you guys, at least that I'm aware of. Again, I will double check, make sure there's no pictures or anything I did miss this week while I was busy working, but if they are, I will just throw them into the video, and I will add in a subtitle note. Alright guys, take it easy. I'll see you all in the next one.